So, everyone seems to be panicking right now over the government shutdown that is likely to happen next week. But will it actually cause the stock market to crash or even impact the economy in any major way? Well, I'm going to answer that question in today's video and I'll give you my full opinion on everything going on here. So, let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. Alright, now a government shutdown typically happens when Congress can't agree on a spending budget, which forces the government to halt all non essential operations, and in this case, it involves Republicans demanding deeper cuts to the spending bills being pushed by Democrats. And a huge part of that, by the way, involves the funding of Ukraine aid as the war with Russia lingers on, which is a topic that continues to become more politicized and argued over by the day. If the two sides can't agree, though, by the end of September, or even on just a temporary funding plan while negotiations continue, then the federal government would have to quote unquote shut down at the start of October, which is next week, until a resolution is passed. Regardless of what your political or social beliefs are on the matter, though, the big question for stock market investors is, will this have any kind of impact on the economy or the stock market? And my answer is, I don't really think so. I mean, don't get me wrong, the media is certainly doing their job of pushing as much fear about it as possible because it's always going to make them the most amount of money, which that in itself can sometimes impact the economy if you scare enough consumers and investors into panicking. But the truth is that a government shutdown would mostly just affect non-essential federal workers, and while that could involve hundreds of thousands of people, maybe even millions at the very extreme end of it, which is not something that should be taken lightly. But the fact is that a law passed in 2019 that guarantees those workers will receive their full back pay as soon as the shutdown ends, and even during that time, anyone furloughed can receive unemployment until they receive their back pay in full. So we're not really talking about people being fired here, but rather just a delay in payment, which in my opinion will very likely be a short delay at that. Since 1980, the government has shut down a total of 14 times, with President Reagan alone overseeing 8 different shutdowns during his time in office, and the absolute longest of the ones that he oversaw was only lasting 3 days. And to illustrate this further, I charted every single one of those 14 shutdowns, which you can see that the vast majority of them only lasted a few days as well, if that. Now, there were, however, 3 particularly long periods of shutdown, with the absolute longest being in December of 2018 under President Trump, which lasted 34 days in total. So obviously the world ended and the stock market had the worst, crash imaginable, right? I mean, there's no way that the federal government shuts down for more than a month and we don't go through an absolute apocalypse, right? Well, not only did the stock market not crash, but the S&P 500 actually rose by over 13% during those 34 days, and it continued to soar in the months after a deal was reached as well. Now, there was a noticeable drop of 15% in the month prior to the shutdown happening, probably because, again, the media does a great job of pushing fear and panic whenever they get the chance to. But like pretty much all dips in stock market history, this too ultimately proved to be just another buying opportunity for anyone investing long term. And I'm not saying that our current situation is exactly the same today, although the market is dipping in a similar fashion, down over 5% this month, which is only 1 percentage point away from being the worst performing month of this year. But what I am saying is that, in my opinion, this has much more to do with lingering inflation and high interest rates that have a much greater chance of sending us into a recession than a government shutdown ever could. In fact, there's several key indicators that have already been pointing towards a recession happening soon. For example, the New York Fed's highly regarded recession watch tool is currently at the highest reading it's been in over 4 decades, showing over a 60% chance of recession, which anytime it was around just 30% or more, a recession actually hit. And on top of that, the yield curve recently hit its biggest inversion level in over 4 decades too, which Since the late 70s, the yield curve has inverted 6 other times, with every single one of them preceding a recession. Even corporations are predicting one too, with CNBC reporting that over 90% of CEOs recently surveyed are actively preparing for a recession as well. So you add on top of that all the fear that the media is pushing during a disastrous government shutdown, and of course you're going to end up with some volatility in the stock market. But again, I stress that the government shutdown itself is not the real concern here, no matter how much anyone tries to convince you otherwise. And the fact that the economy is in such bad shape to begin with tells me that Congress is probably going to be under a lot of pressure to get a deal done as soon as possible. So I really don't think it's going to last as long as people might think it will. I could be wrong, of course, but that's my general feeling of it. But again, what I do think we actually need to be paying more attention to is inflation and interest rates, which, by the way, I will be covering as usual more heavily in my upcoming stock market monthly update video for October, which I will be releasing later this weekend. Make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell if you don't want to miss that video. But until then, I'm just not really worried or panicking over the stuff that's going on right now. These type of events are things that I usually welcome because they cause more volatility in the stock market, which means that I get better prices on some of my favorite stocks. And as a long-term minded investor, I'm always looking for the best deals out there. So, that's just me personally. I don't usually panic over these types of things, but of course, I'd love to hear what you all have to say down below. Do you agree or disagree with anything I said? Let me know why or why not down in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts on all these things as well. But thank you for stopping by. Thank you for all your support, my friends. I hope you're all doing well, and I wish you, of course, the best of luck with any decisions that you're making out there in the stock market. But until then, I will catch you in the next video. Take care, my friends. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.